We're going to talk about data fetching and routing. So the first thing I'm going to do is just create a new project for this. So let's do npx create React app data fetching. Okay. And then I'm just going to kind of cd into it, even though this is going to take a minute to put it together for me. Actually, I didn't mean to cd into it. I meant to open it in VS Code, whatever. Okay. So let's just talk real quick while we're waiting for this about what this whole routing and data fetching thing is going to be like, right? The concept of a single page application, what does that mean?
We have just one indexation.
Very good, yeah. So I heard in a couple places we really only have one index.html, just one HTML page. Does that mean, though, that we can't have different, quote, pages like we do in other applications? No. Yeah, so that's the cool thing, is that even though it's a single page application, I can still have different routes. And I can change the address in my address bar to reflect those different routes. Now that's going to happen a little bit differently than it did in our Django apps, in that we're not going to see a long, hard page refresh. We're just going to kind of zip to that other route right away. So it'll be a nice, fast feel. Right. Yeah, that's the crazy thing, is that this index.html, it's being injected with all this content. And we talked about that a little bit yesterday in the afternoon. That's all happening by JavaScript, right? So then if I change to some different route, all of that content that was inside the, our root div is just going to be swapped out for whatever that next page is. So it happens really fast. And we get a nice, smooth, kind of almost native app-like feel from it. So let me open this up in VS Code. Okay, and then let's run this guy. So open up my terminal, npm run start. Let me make this a little bigger. Okay. So we've got our app trying to run here. Yes, loading. All right. Now, in order for us to be able to do some route changes, we're going to need to install another package here. Okay? And there are some different routing packages that you guys can use with React, but the one that we're going to use is called reach route. Okay, so I'll open up another terminal window here in my VS Code, and I'm just going to say npm install @reach/router. No. No, routing is actually our ability to fake like we're going to a different page. So even though we still only have that one index.html, it's going to look like we're actually going to different pages. Yeah, kind of weird. It is a little bit weird, so it's something that you guys aren't used to yet, but we'll get used to it. All right, wow, this is still not done installing. Sorry about that. So I just ran npm install, and then the package that I'm installing was this @reach/router. Instead of the what? There's another one called React Router, which is pretty similar, actually. And my understanding is that those two libraries are going to merge at some point in the future. So React Router was kind of the more popular one for a while, and then Reach Router came along and overtook it in popularity. They both do very similar things. So yeah, once you're kind of comfortable using one of them, you would probably be able to jump over and use the other one. So just preference. It's not really too big of a thing. All right, and then there's one other package that I'm going to install too, and this is going to enable us to make our requests, like you were asking about, Isaiah. This package is called Axios. Okay? What the Axie? So, npm install Axios. Oops. One word of note about Axios: it is not absolutely a requirement to use Axios in any kind of a project. There is an API in native JavaScript called fetch that you could use to make your requests as well. We're going to use Axios. It's slightly simpler, but they're actually quite similar in a lot of respects.
I guess it's also like that's where we have to like for a lot of buttons we have to override it because the HTML itself will get tests whatever that is default title.
Oh, you mean overriding like a form submission or something like that,
I
right?
guess I'm trying to figure out like what these concepts of the request is this writing things in the window as a URL is also
Right.
a request. There's time structure.
So and we'll get to that. So let's not like complicate it too much just yet, because then we'll confuse people. So we'll talk about the request later on when we actually make some. Yes.
Are these installed locally or we have to
No, these are being installed just strictly in this project right
so
here.
we have to install it?
So if we look inside our package.json here, you'll see now I have these extra dependencies. So I've just installed Axios, right? And I've also installed this reach router right there. Okay? All of these other dependencies were already installed by Create React App.
What was the syntax you did to install Axios?
It was just npm install and then Axios.
Okay. And based on the
hang on.
install, sorry.
That's okay.
Because like you didn't set it as a global installation, it's based on the project you're executing on?
Yeah, so if I don't install it globally, it's just going to be strictly in this folder that I'm in.
Okay, so
Whatever directory I'm currently in. Yeah.
that makes sense.
Okay. Cool. Yes.
If you install them globally, both they're already in Axios, would it automatically be available in the project when you create a new project?
Yeah, the only problem is if I then go and share that project with you and you don't have Axios installed globally, and then you install the dependencies that you saw, in your package.json here for the project, well, something's going to go wrong when you try to run the project, right? It's going to say, Axios is not available because it wasn't in this list of dependencies.
Even if you install it, will not add it to the list of dependencies if it's globally installed?
Correct.
Oh.
Yep.
So even if you install it locally, it won't recognize it because or you have to then install it locally.
Yeah, you'd have to then install it locally, which would then add it to the dependencies list anyway. So you might as well just add it to the dependencies list right away,
Okay.
right? Yeah. Some things it would make sense to install globally, like NodeMon, that we're going to end up using in a lot of different places. But most things are going to be project specific.
Okay.
Okay, cool. So we've got these two packages now. Now what I want to do is just kind of like set up a rough structure for how we can create some routing inside of our application. So inside of our source folder, of course, we've got this app.js, right? I'm going to rip out some of this content here as we've been kind of doing. And then what I want to do, because I'm going to create some different routes in my app, is I'm just going to import, and I'm going to destructure router from @reachRouter. Okay? And what this is going to give me is it's going to give me a wrapper component that I can put some different routes inside. Okay? So let's go like this. What's that?
Did you do the heap or structure?
No, I wasn't grabbing use state up here because I'm not actually going to use state in this component. If I was, then I would need to bring it in, right? Okay, good question. So let's just create this router component, right? And then inside here, what I'm going to need to have are some different components, and then I need to say what the actual path for those components would be. So let me create my components folder so that we have something to work with here. Or actually, let me back up here. Instead of having a components folder in this case, I'm going to have a views folder. Bless you. All right, that's how I know the lecture started.
Right.
So in our views folder, this is going to be like the different, quote, pages that we can look at inside of our application, right? I just made it right now. Yeah, exactly. So let's say we're going to create a home page. .js. And then in here, I'm just going to import React from React. I'm going to create this function, so home page. And then all this is going to return out is probably going to be something like home page. Okay? Now I need to export that as well, right? So export default home page. And now I can go back to my app.js and import this page. So let's go import homepage from .views/homepage. Okay, and then I can go ahead and use that inside here. So I'm going to say homepage path equals / because that's just the root route, right? I did indeed. Yes. Really nothing. So yeah, we could do the same thing. We could say now it wouldn't work if you say export default const. Check this out. That won't work. But what you can do is you can export default the actual function itself. I could go like that. Yeah, now it's anonymous, right?
Yeah.
You call it export.
Well, in the parent, it's still going to be called homepage.
That's the file.
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah,
file.
because when I'm importing a default export, I can basically call it whatever I want. And generally, you're going to want to stick with whatever the name of the component is or whatever. But you could change that to something else.
So when it says default, that's like default name.
Default just means this is the one thing that's going to be exported from this file.
Oh,
That's all.
okay.
All right, so let's give this a try. If we go back to our app here, we're seeing homepage, right? Because the route that we're on right now, if you look up there, we haven't gone it, right? Okay, cool. So let's say I want to create some kind of a secondary page. Let's do that. Let's go inside of our views. I'll just create secondary.js. Okay, import. I'm just going to grab this and change it. Okay, and then here we'll just say secondary page. Yeah, we'll get to the links in a second. I do want to do that as well. So let's import secondary from secondary. Okay, cool. So we've got that. I'm going to duplicate this down here and then just replace this with secondary. And then let's say the path is going to be secondary, right? No, you don't need the slash unless it's the actual root route. So secondary, okay? And there we are. Sure. So we're just saying this is the path that's going to take us to that specific route, right? Okay, cool. Now, obviously, that's not so great because we actually had to do a hard refresh when I put in that URL, right? What if I did something better where I had some links that could just kind of zoom me back and forth between these two guys? So let's do that. So ReachRouter also has something called a link component that we can import as well. And up above, so I'm just going to wrap this whole thing in a div. Wrap it in a div. And then up above here, let's have a couple links. So we'll have a link that goes to the home page. So when we make one of these link components, we want to say, where does it go to? So I'm going to give it a to attribute that just goes to the /, right? And then inside that link, I'm just going to put homepage. Duplicate this down, and then the second one will go to secondary. Secondary.
And you can put anything between those tags.
Yeah, so if you think of this link tag, it's basically like doing an href, right? And we'll see if we inspect the HTML, there is an href inside there. Pretty cool.
And for the two attributes, so you would have to put the / in front.
Yeah, and here you are going to want to use a / in front.
If you use it at the bottom, is it still in the middle? Just one. Try this.
I'm not entirely sure. Let's see. Okay, so seems like it does. Yeah, you just don't have to do it. So
That's good.
yeah, maybe I'm going to try to insert a space in here because it's. Notice here how this stuff has been sandwiched together, right? There's no space in between those links. So that's one of the things that's a little bit tricky with React is that it's going to compress all of the white space. It'll take that stuff out. So what we can do, we can add a BR as you were suggesting here. Notice that we have to do the ending / in this guy because it's self-closing, right? Or the other thing that we could do is we could just add a space in like this. Curly braces space. All right? So if I wanted them to be side by side, that would do it too. Okay? So now I should be able to zoom back and forth between these two pages. Home page, secondary. Notice how there's no, it's so fast, right?
Yeah.
So let's inspect this HTML real quick. And you guys can see that we actually do have hrefs there. So they look like regular links, but what do you think is happening when I'm clicking on those guys?
When you click on it and make a request, that it will just return that section of the HTML which link update the page.
Yeah, you're pretty much on point. We're not necessarily making a request to the server, but what we're doing is we're stopping what the default action would be, right? In the same way that we were kind of like stopping our regular form submissions before. We're stopping it from making a brand new request to that other route and doing like a hard page reload.
Is this essentially like jQuery when you replace the HTML?
Yeah, it's a little more powerful than jQuery. Because jQuery we have to do a lot of work. You know, even when we're saying we want to swap out some content, pretty painful, right? I can't just say like put this component in there. But that's what this is doing, is it's completely swapping out our component with whatever the new route was. So
You said it's a full page reload?
no, it is not. So let's check our network here, and I'm just going to.
Well, it's a full document rendering. Yes.
So yeah, it's basically gonna be re-rendering everything inside this router component, right? So depending on which route we've hit, it's either going to be rendering this guy, the secondary, or it'd be rendering the home page.
Oh, okay. So like things outside, yeah, that makes sense. But it's what's inside the
Right. Yes.
So technically, in each path that or each route that we create our view page for, we can pretty much lay it out however we want. So we can make one that leads to a form, one an about us, contact
Sure.
us, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally. So yeah, if we were to look down here and just see what requests are being made, I can open up my network tab here, and I'm going to refresh the page. Why did I not get any content here? Oh, because I'm only looking at XHR. Okay, so here you can see a lot of these things that were requested in the beginning. I made a request to secondary, and then I made some requests to some JavaScript files, right? That was it. Now let's just keep an eye on this and see if any other requests are made when I go to the home page. So if I go home page, no requests being made, right? None of this changed down here. These were just images that loaded on the initial page load. If I go back to secondary, no request being made here, right? But I am changing pages. Kind of cool, right?
If you hard refresh the page on secondary, you will still stay on secondary, right? You want to set back to
Correct.
regular.
Yeah, exactly. If I hard reload here from secondary, it will still show me the second.
Right. Usually hard reload is a control R, right?
Yes.
That's
Or
interesting.
Command R if you're on Mac. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Shift that.
Question?
Like if you add anything on all sides of the router, will it stay on both pages?
Yes. Yeah, because that's what I did here, right? I put these links outside of my router so that these will always render. Yeah.
So it's more like a homepage to like the router will be a nav bar.
Yeah, you could. I was gonna say that. You can kind of think of this as our nav bar, right? These are just our links up above. Yeah, exactly.
That's why I also like, I think this is going back to the previous point, but it's that outside element homepage is a dynamic nature and changing.
Mhm.
Even when you do a router, the current state of that homepage exists, so you're not updating that.
Right.
What does the structure matter? Like if, let's say the links are in separate divs, and the router is in a separate div, they will still work, right? They don't have to the
No, yeah, I could put this in a div here. That would be fine. So I could wrap these guys. Do you mean to actually bring these outside of the other div?
No.
Is this
That's how
okay?
you have it right now.
Okay, yeah.
You have it, and then the router is in a separate div by itself.
Yeah, this will still work.
Okay, just out of curiosity, in your app.js, can you set IDs for those divs?
Yeah,
Can you reference them to CSS?
yeah. Yes, you can. Indeed. Cool. So that's about all there is to routing. There's going to be one small extra thing that I show you guys when we start talking about data fetching, but mostly this is how it works. Okay, so you'll have some link components that you can use to actually go to those different routes, and then you'll have your actual component, your kind of page components, and then a path just saying, what route does that represent, right? All right, before we move on to data fetching, let me have thumbs on this. I have a question. Feels like people understand, which I'm happy
This is nice.
about. Yeah. Everybody good?
Actually useful.
Excellent, excellent. All right, question over here.
I have a question actually.
Yep.
So on this links, where are you gonna edit it if it's, let's say we're gonna go to secondary and you don't wanna show the home page? I mean the first link. Can we still do that over there, or we need to?
Well, if you wanted that to be specific to the page, you'd probably want to have that link somewhere inside the actual component, right? Yeah, and the reason why I brought it out of the components is because I wanted those to show kind of no matter what page we were on.
Yeah, like a persistent though.
Yeah.
But you could technically have them inside the actual.
Yeah, you'd have them inside one of these guys if
Like
you wanted to sort of hide
secondary.js
something.
in the actual file.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And then you can specify that menu for that application.
Question. So it would look the same then. It would look linked to whatever on wherever page or wherever you're at.
Right.
Okay.
All right, cool. So let's walk into our data fetching portion, which is going to be, we're going to kind of use this alongside our routing to create something that's a little bit more powerful. Now, I went online to try to find some APIs that we could work with, and I think I found one that looks pretty interesting. So I found there's a SpaceX API. All right. So yeah, check this out. Let's take a look at this real quick. So we've got all of these endpoints that we could potentially be using from the SpaceX API here.
You have to go with dragons.
Yeah, what are these dragons? Does anybody know what that is? What the heck? Dragons. What is going on here? Dragon 1 capsule, type capsule.
One of the spaceships, no?
Yeah.
The rockets.
It's just some spaceship, huh? Okay. So it looks like there are only 2 dragons though, so I'm not sure if we're going to use those because there just aren't that many. What about, do we want to use launches maybe? Because here we can do a request and see all the launches, and it seems like there are quite a few in here. A lot, right? Yeah, and then the other endpoint that I was thinking we could use is this one launch endpoint, which would be kind of nice, right? So we could basically go and retrieve all the launches that had happened. We can kind of render out a list of all those launches, and then we could have links that would take us to a single launch. That'd be kind of cool, right? All right. So let's go ahead and create some components that are going to do these things. So inside my views folder, let's create a launches component. Okay. I know I'm going to want to import React, and I know I'm also going to want some state in there. Can you guys imagine why I want state here? No, we're not going to be able to. We're not going to be able to edit any of those launches.
No, because you wouldn't be able to edit the launches if you put them in top. Well, we don't want that.
Here's the thing: when we first load up this page, are we going to have all the launches? Not yet, right? We need to actually go reach out and grab them from this API. So that's where the state comes into play. Is that we won't have them in the beginning. Later on, we will. All right. And then we also want to bring in this use effect hook, which we talked about yesterday. This will allow us to do something just when that component first loads. All right. So we'll take those guys from React as well. Then I'm just going to export a default function here. Okay. And then inside that function, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set my launches to be just like an empty array to begin with. Okay. So we'll say const launches and then set launches equals the result of invoking the use state hook against an empty array. Okay? And then what I'm going to return out is going to be, I'm going to want to map through those launches somehow, right? So that we can actually display something on screen. So let's just come down here, we'll say return, and then I'm going to say launches.map. Okay? You guys remember what map takes? We forgot, it takes a callback function, right? So let's say our callback function is going to take a launch. Then what we're going to do is we'll create like a div. And then inside that div, let's see what the launch actually has so that we can work with it, right? It's got a, a mission name and a year maybe we should use, right? A name and a year. Anything else we might want?
I don't know if we want the date.
Yeah, we could do the date. All right. So launch date local maybe we want?
Yeah.
Okay. So mission name. So we've got this launch. Let's do h2 tag here. And that's going to be, we're going to put that in curly braces because we know it's a JavaScript expression, right? Launch.mission underscore name. Okay. I'll just do like a p tag here. This was going to be launch, date?
I think it was year.
Launch date local,
Alright.
right? That's what we want? Okay, so launch date local. Okay, fair enough. So let's just start with that. Now the other thing that we want to do is when this page loads, let's go and get that data, right? So what we want to do is we want to invoke this use effect hook. And what does use effect take?
The URL to the API.
No. A callback function, right? Yeah. Okay, so we'll do, I'm just going to create a little anonymous arrow function in there. The other thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to add this empty array here. Does anybody remember what that does? Yeah, so this means that we only run this the first time the component loads up. Okay? Because we don't want to just keep grabbing this data every single time something happens with the page, right? Okay. So inside this callback function, what we want to do is we want to go get that data. Well, we installed a tool that's going to help us make requests, right? What was that? Axios. So let's import that. Axios from Axios. Okay? And then I'm going to be making a GET request. Okay? You guys kind of remember the differences between the GET and the POST requests? So GET is generally, we're just trying to read some data, versus a POST request means we're usually trying to make some change on the back end of the application. All right, so we're going to say axios.get, and then I'm going to pass in the URL that I want to go make the GET request to. Now it tells us here in the API what that is, so I'll just copy this right here. Whoa, stop it. Can't see. Something's blocking me here. Okay, cool. So I've copied it here. Let's just drop that URL in. Okay, and then over here, what do we think this GET request is going to return?
Response.
It's kind of what you'd think, right? Like it'll give me back the actual data. So I could just say, set a variable equal to this thing, and there I go. There's my data. Does it work that way though? I know, wouldn't that be easy? Well, we are still going to be using our state, right? We're going to set our launches once we get the data back. However, what axios.get returns us is not the data itself. It returns us a promise. This is why I was thinking about talking about them a little bit more this afternoon. Okay? So what a promise is it's just this idea that there will be some potential future data here. It's just representing the potential future data. It's a special kind of object, but it's not the data itself. Okay? So I can't just say, set launches and then pass in this thing. That won't work. All right. But instead, what I can do is I can chain off of this special promise object by using a method called then. So if I use this method called then, that is going to run once this promise resolves itself. So once I've successfully gotten my data back, it will run whatever callback I put inside the then method. Okay? So let's do that. Let's come in here. We'll say .then. Okay? Notice how I'm invoking this then method, right? With parentheses. Now what I need to put inside this is a callback function that I want to run. For now, all I'm going to do is I'm just going to console log the actual response. So I can just put in here console.log. Now why didn't I invoke console.log? Why are there no parentheses at the end there?
You're actually passing console.log.
I'm passing the actual function. I'm not calling it. Who's going to call it for me? The promise itself. Once the promise has successfully resolved, it will then call this console log function. Okay?
I'm guessing because it's a built-in promise, that's whenever it's about 200 response code or something.
Say that one more time.
And also the success of the promise is based on the response to it or something like that.
Correct. Yeah, it's going to be based on the actual. Actually, I take that back. In Axios specifically, yes, I believe it is. But if you use the fetch API, the native JavaScript way of doing these requests, you would still get a successful request even if it wasn't a response code of 200. But then there is a way to check the response code and make sure that it's what you wanted.
So it's like I guess for the native fetch, it's if you got any code.
Yeah, and that's probably one reason why we've elected to use Axios instead,
Right.
because Axios would actually check the response code.
Okay.
All right. So cool. Let's just see what we're getting back. We're gonna refresh this page, right? Oh, actually, I haven't even put that in our routes yet, have I?
Nope.
Okay, so let's not get ahead of ourselves. Sorry. So if I go back to our app, let's import this component. So import launches from views/launches. Okay, and then the path that I'm going to give that will just be launches. Okay, so we'll say launches. Same thing over here. And then I'm going to create an actual route for it here so that we can go to it. Or a link is what I meant to say. Launches. Okay, and if I go back to my application, cool, launches here. I'm going to open up my console so that we can see what's happening. Okay. Wow. Looks like I got some data down there, huh? Nice. So inside this data property of the response object, notice how I got an array. That was the array of launches, right? So now how can I set my launches to be equal to that thing? This is where our callback comes into play here from our axios.get, right? When inside our .then, this is the function that we want to run once the thing has successfully come back with some data. Yeah, so we're going to do our set launches inside here. I'm going to create a little arrow function that takes in a response. And then I'm going to say set launches against the response data property. Okay, so let's just make sure that we're doing this right. Notice how our response had this property called data, and that's the thing that has the array of launches. Okay, so let's try that. Let me save it. Come back here. Okay, so now we're just getting a warning, but we can see we actually are rendering out these launches for now. So the warning that it's telling us is that whenever we map through something, each item should have a unique key inside of it. Well, these guys do, right? In the array of data that they pass back, each mission has an actual ID. So we can use that for our key. Let's do that. Let's go in here and then we'll say the div here, it needs to be the top level element in your mapping function. So we'll say the key equals launch, what was it called? Was it like mission ID? Oh, flight number. Flight number is what it is. Number. Okay. And then if we refresh that, you can see it's not complaining anymore. Why are we not seeing the date though? Let me check the network here. So we made this request to launches. We got back this array of data. Launch date local. Did I spell that wrong? Yes, I did spell it wrong. All right. Cool. There we go. All right. Cool. So now the next thing that we want to do is we want to be able to actually click on any individual launch and kind of go to its page, right? So what I want to do is I want to surround these guys with one of those link components and then just provide a path to its ID. So let's try that out. So let's go over here inside of our mapping function. Around this h2 tag, I'm going to actually, you know what? I think I can do this in a better way. So let's import our link component, right? Import link from reach router. Okay, and then in this link, I should be able to specify what I want the component. Oh no, I can't do this. Sorry. Okay, so let's just create this link, and then the 2 is going to be we'll say 2 launches, and then I'm going to have some specific ID, right? Can I just go like this, though? And then if I end this link, then I'm just going to push up this H2 inside there. So what's wrong with what I just did?
I think that's when we wrap the launch part number.
Yeah, so if I'm going to be sort of concatenating some things together, because again, this is a JavaScript expression, right? It needs to go inside curly braces. Yeah, so let's do that. Take this out. Actually, I still do need this quote over here, but then end this, and there we go, we're okay. All right, so if I refresh that here, we should see some actual links. Now, obviously, I don't have pages yet at these specific URLs. You see, this is probably super hard to see for you guys, but if I roll over these links, I'm seeing /launches/ whatever the ID of that launch is, and that's what I wanted. So that's perfect. All right, cool. So now we have to create an actual page for the single launch, right? So let's go inside of our views folder and let's just create one more. So we'll call it like single launch.js. Okay. Here I'm going to need pretty much the same stuff, right? I still need the use effect because I'm going to go get that launches information, and then use state as well. Okay. And then we're just going to export a default function. Okay. However, this time I'm going to need to know something about the launch, right? What do I need to know? The actual ID, right? So I'm going to use some destructuring here. Is this okay with you guys? So I know that my component is going to get this prop called ID, which will tell me which flight number I'm looking for. All right. And then inside that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my state again. So we'll say const launch set launch. And then what are we going to set it initially to? Maybe null, right? I don't have my launch yet, but I will get it in the future. And then what am I going to do to get that launch?
You can make that class using ID.
Correct. So first thing, I'm going to invoke this use effect hook, right? The use effect hook, again, takes a callback function. And then inside that callback function, this is where I'm going to make my actual GET request. So if I'm making a GET request, I need to import this library Axios that we're using. So import Axios from Axios. Okay. And then I'm going to say Axios.get, and then the endpoint here, if I go to one launch, is going to be, gosh, I wish I could copy this better. It's going to be this. Oops. Let me get rid of all this here. But I don't want this hard-coded ID, right? I want that replaced by this ID here that the component took in. Okay, so let's just take that off, and then I'm going to concatenate it. So I'm going to say plus ID. Okay. And then when we successfully get that data back, let's just console log it at first. Curly braces where?
With the ID.
You mean in the ID?
Yeah.
No, I don't. Only inside of your JSX do we have to surround our JavaScript
Oh,
expressions with a curly brace.
Because it's already in curly braces.
Well, it is, but this is just a function bot.
Yeah.
So the meaning of those curly braces is not exactly the same, right? It just means that we're introducing the body of the function here. Okay, cool. So we're just going to console log it out for now. And then the other thing that we want to do is we need to return something, right? So I can just say return some div, and I'll say for now the ID is whatever our ID is. So I'll just put that inside those curly braces. Okay. We're not using either of these guys yet, but we will. And then let's import this into our app, right? So go back to our app and say import single launch from use single launch. Cool, and then I'll just add this down here. Single launch. Okay, there's one small change I need to make to the path. I'm giving it this ID following a colon. What do you guys think that means? Does that kind of look familiar to our routing params that we were using in Django? Although in Django we were doing it with the angle brackets, remember that? So this is kind of like, we don't know what specific ID this will be, but it will be something. It's a placeholder for us, okay? And then we're saying that when this component gets created, the component's now going to have access to this prop called ID. And that's what will allow us to find the correct launch that we want. Okay, so let's go back to our app and see if this is working the way that we're expecting it to. I'm going to open up my console as well. So if I click on one of these guys, ratsat, okay, it's telling us that that the ID was 4, so that's perfect because we are seeing a 4 up in the URL. Hopefully you guys can see that. And then we also got our data down here. So this is kind of nice. If I look here at my preview, I did get back information about flight 4, so that's perfect. Now all I need to do is set the launch, right? Because I have that use state working in this component. And let's see here. Let's go back to single launch. So here, let's just say we get back this response, right? And then I'm going to say set launch. And what I'm going to pass into that is going to be the response.data. Okay. So now we're going to have like some different rendering situations, right? What if I'm still waiting for my data back? Do I want to just return this maybe? The idea is that. Put loading. All right, fair enough. All right, so if launch, or we'll just say if no launch, right? So if launch equals null, then we should get inside this guy. We'll just return loading dot 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 like that. Whoops, why did I do that? There's my semicolon, Manny. You see that? Okay, cool. So let's and then if I do have my launch data, then I probably want to display something else, right? Some information about that launch. So div, I don't know, do we want this to look any different? H4. Okay. And then here we'll just put the launch. What was it? Mission name?
Yeah.
Mission name, yeah. Okay. Name. Maybe I can get the other one right this time. Okay. So inside here we'll do launch dot flight date local. I almost did it, yeah. I'm so used to typing data, I guess. All right.
You probably can provide the ID just to make it a little different.
Yeah, there you go. All right, so we'll say p tag. This is going to look awesome. Launch mission number. Flight number, yes. Good. All right, let's go back here. Ratsat. Did I mess up the date again?
I think so.
Oh no, why is this thing still calling? We forgot one thing. God darn it.
Oh, the bracket.
I forgot to say I only want it running on Jesus. I was making a lot of requests. I hope I don't get locked out. All right, so there we go.
What date's still there?
Launch date local. Is that not what I put? Oh, I put flight date. Whoops. All right. Okay.
There you go.
Sweet, right? So now we can go back to, whoops, I need a space in that. Because these links are just sandwiched right together. Okay, so if I want to go to my launches, I can click on this, right? It'll make a request. Now I can go see anything about any one of these launches. CRS1, right? Iridium next mission.
Put a timeout on the loading so you can just see.
Okay, so how do you want me to do that? I mean, obviously set timeout, but exactly like, what do you want me to give it, like an extra second or something?
A second or
Okay. All right, so inside here we'll say set timeout. And when we call this function, we need to provide our own callback. Okay, so our callback is just going to do this, right? Ooh, it's starting to get kind of unreadable here. Let's see if I can fix that. Okay, and then we also need to tell it how long do we want it to wait to actually make that call on our behalf. So if we want it to wait a second, 1,000 milliseconds, right? Okay, so you guys could kind of see that was happening there. And if I go hit a different one like Turkmen Alem, loading, there we go. So actually their API was pretty quick, right? We were getting these things back like that. So that was nice. All right. Do you guys like that? Data fetching? Routing? Any questions about what we're doing with the data fetching? No? You guys all tired now? Ready for a nap? Go hit the couch. All right. So, yeah, let's plan on probably talking about promises this afternoon. All right? Cool. Thanks, guys.